500 or 600 years from now, humanity, in its furthest exploration of the galaxy, has traveled over 3,000 light years from home and is investigating the remains of a star which went supernova. The ship's mission is to reconstruct the events which led to the stellar catastrophe and to observe the new nebula forming, the Phoenix Nebula. Within the nebula existed a star which had been like our own, but some 6,000 years ago had exploded and became a white dwarf. Alongside the white dwarf, the interstellar gases, the remnants of an unimaginably powerful nuclear bomb, essentially, there was a surprise. There remained a single planet in the system, one which had not been obliterated by the supernova. A small dwarf planet near the outskirts of the solar system, one not unlike Pluto. Only its distance from the system's star saved the planet from total destruction, but even still, any thin atmosphere or gases covering the planet were boiled away by the catastrophe, and all that remains is a barren rock. Although no life resided on the planet, and most likely due to the distance from the sun never did, there was something else incredible waiting to be discovered. Signs of past intelligence, a marker. Not just a physical marker and one which had just barely survived, but also a pattern of radiation leading towards one specific spot on the planet, an entrance, and within a vault. Within the vault was the remains of an incredible civilization, one which had advanced so far, which had developed incredible technology, but which was ultimately unable to escape their stellar cradle and was thus annihilated by their sun going supernova. Within the vault was a record of their civilization, everything they thought the universe should see. The beacon showed the way, and the vault contained their last bid for immortality. What strikes the scientists who discover this civilization the most, the ones who drill through the vault's entrance for weeks to discover the treasures within, is the beauty of the civilization left within. A civilization doomed from the start, which was able to develop and flourish only to be wiped away by something they could never hope to stop. The record had a key to their language, many generations worth of written works, music, pictures of their cities and their peoples, all of it leaving the scientists with a profound feeling of sadness. This was a kind, a beautiful civilization, a warm civilization which they think may have been in some way superior to humanity. Of course, what a species chooses to leave behind may not paint a total picture, but the civilization's destruction is certainly a tragedy, especially considering the relatively close distance to Earth. It's a tragedy that the people were cut down at the height of their grace, but also that humanity remains lonely, as did this other unknown civilization, up until the very end. But there's one final fact which will shake humanity, and which certainly shakes the Jesuit priest on board. They were not an evil people. I do not know what gods they worshipped, if indeed they worshipped any, but I have looked back at them across the centuries and have watched while their loveliness they used their last strength to preserve was brought forth again into the light of their shrunken sun. They could have taught us much. Why were they destroyed? Yet, God has no need to justify his actions to man. He who has built the universe can destroy it when he chooses. That I could have accepted, hard though it is to look into whole worlds and peoples thrown into the furnace. But there comes a point when even the deepest faith must falter, and now as I look into the calculations lying before me, I have reached that point at last. I know in what year the light of this colossal conflagration reached the Earth. I know how brilliantly the supernova, whose corpse now dwindles behind our speeding ship, once shone into the terrestrial skies. I know how it must have blazed low in the east before sunrise, like a beacon in the dawn. There can be no reasonable doubt. The ancient mystery is solved at last. Yet, O God, there were so many stars you could have used. What was the need to give these people to the fire, that the symbol of their passing might shine above Bethlehem? So, the grand reveal at the end of The Star, one of the most famous short stories by acclaimed sci-fi writer Arthur C. Clarke, is that the supernova responsible for wiping out this unnamed beautiful civilization also produced the Star of Bethlehem, the star heralding the birth of Jesus, and which led many to Jesus' birthplace. I really like this story. It was one of the first I read when I started getting more into reading science fiction, which I think is pretty common. One of the really cool things about the golden age of science fiction extending into the 50s and 60s is that a lot of authors, aside from writing full-length novels, would also produce shorter works for especially magazines. The Star was written in 1955 for Infinity Science Fiction, and the benefit of this different format is that the story is forced to work within the confines of the medium. It has to grip readers immediately. You want something different, which can be experienced in only a few pages, and the author is forced to tell a complete story with a very limited word count, and I think The Star really benefits from that. The reveal at the end is truly shocking, especially because most of the story is about the discovery of this civilization, with the reveal only being launched upon the reader at the last. I like this so much because there's already the shaking of the Jesuits' fate by the destruction of what seems to be just an innocent civilization. As I've now read the story many times since I first did a couple of decades ago, I've definitely taken a different view. I think upon the first reading, my takeaway was, oh, he's learned that the Bethlehem Star was fake. It wasn't some divine thing. It was just the after effects of something which happened that people observed on Earth. But really, the story is more complex than that. If a god exists, he not only can cause a star to go supernova, but he designed it to eventually happen that way. So the implied crisis of faith, and the more interesting one in the short story, is that if God exists, he was willing to sacrifice this entire civilization to herald the coming of Jesus. That's of course if it is the Christian God, but from the Jesuits' point of view, an entire civilization was sacrificed to allow the Christ story to play out. What does that say of God? What does that say about the uncaring nature of the Creator? In reality, I think some religious people would have their faith bolstered by this. It would be a confirmation that human beings, that we are the chosen people, and that everything else in the universe serves us. Others, I think, would wonder, why would a god sacrifice a civilization of trillions, perhaps, to make a twinkle in the night sky? Others would lose faith completely, and I think it's really all of this, the ethical questions, the sort of primeval mystery, which makes this story so fun. I think some people rightfully criticize The Star for being a bit of a gotcha. Like, it's a story with a very clear twist, a grand reveal, which is meant to elicit an emotional reaction. I personally really enjoy that for short stories. Others don't like to see a story completely built around a surprise like that. Either way, I also do enjoy the little hints you get around the way, especially regarding dates. You gotta kind of wiggle the numbers a little bit, but it does work. For example, we know from the first line that the star is 3,000 years away, and the cataclysm, we later learned, happened 6,000 years ago. Given the speed of light, that means the light of the supernova, which we know is visible to humanity, would have been in our skies about 3,000 years ago. Later, we learn that the story takes place roughly 1,000 years after the 1500s, but that's said generally. So when you play with some rounding, it all hints at the supernova being visible at Earth when the Bethlehem Star would have been as well. Anyway, that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed this sci-fi discussion video. We've got plenty more on the channel right now. We've covered past Arthur Clarke works, including 2001: A Space Odyssey. Similarly, if you want more Clarke and religion, there's also the 9 Billion Names of God, and I'd also recommend my video on Childhood's End, which I think is underappreciated on the channel. Am I allowed to say that about my own videos? I don't know. Either way, if there's a science fiction short story, novella, or full-length novel you'd like to see covered on the channel in the future, please let me know down below. But that's all I've got. Until next time, be safe, have a good one, may the Force be with you.